That you like. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the first week of the Power BI, or I'm sorry, the Data Gods Book Club. We're going to be talking about data storytelling with Brent Dykes' book, Effective Data Storytelling. We're going to be doing chapters 1 and 2. I'm joined this week by a number of people live in Teams, where we're going to be talking about the insights that we've gained by looking at and reading the first 2 chapters of this book. I'm going to show you a couple of different insights that I took from working inside or reading these 2 chapters and applied them inside of Power BI. But nobody wants to just hear me talk. Let's head over to it. All right. Alliance is counting on you. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, turn on that alarm bell so you don't miss any future emission. All right, everybody, welcome. Oops, hang on. Gotta get the speakers up. We're good to go there. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome. Say hi to YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
Hi.
Hello.
Excited to have you guys all here today. I'm hopeful that you guys have taken the chance to read through chapters 1 and 2. We're going to be going through and talking through these first 2 chapters. I want to get your takes on it. And there are a couple of discussion points that we're going to be kind of going over today. So I'm going to kind of move you up into the corner here. And then I'm going to bring in the chapter 1 discussion guide. Oops, maybe that's too big. We'll zoom this a little bit. There we go. Now we can see people, we can see most of the discussion guide, and we're good to go here. All right. Now,
I was making room for the visual sliding over.
There you go. Yeah, slide over a bit. Yes. So, if you have not had a chance to read chapters 1 and 2, that's okay. But if you have, like, can I see a show of hands? Anyone who has read it already? Woo! All right. Good. Okay. So I want to hear. I'm going to kick us off on what my favorite insight was from the book as you guys start to gather, on chapter 1. And then as I go through this, I want you guys to think about what is it that's your number one insight around chapter 1. That's the introduction to how you drive change. My biggest thing is Brent described a story about time where he was just getting into analytics and he was presenting a finding about consumers and their desire for free shipping or not. And in that meeting, a high-level executive called him, he said, full blank, right? And I just called him to the mat, right? And he said, oh my gosh, like he didn't know how to handle it. And I just thought, how true is that? But how true is it that we should be prepared for those situations and design that into our Power BI reports? And so I came up with something that I've been doing for a long time, but I haven't thought about this in a long time. And I call it the BS line. Okay. And so here is my Power BI report that I wanted to use to showcase the BS line, right? So this is my bank reseller sales. It outlines, it's your typical Power BI report. But you can see in here that Guardian Bank represents the largest sum of the sales that are out there. And if you hone in on it, you can see that, this company, Vigorous, whatever it is, Vigorous exercise company, that makes sense, is the largest customer. Here's where you might hear full blank, right? And this is where you need to make sure that you have a BS line or a BS pattern to be able to justify and showcase it. And I call the BS line the line that's right below the page. Oh, I didn't. So this is the BS line. So what's above it is where you can see BS and you can have insights that people may not find meaningful or may seem shocking or not correct. But if you scroll down, that's when you can start to get into the details and you can start to say like, okay, hey, I thought that was BS. But as I come down, I can go in and I can actually articulate and I can see the details behind that data. so that I can say, you know what, I thought that was BS, but apparently it's not, right? I have the details right there, right inside my experience, and there's no doubting that's true, right? That was my number one takeaway. Kevin, I see you've got your hand raised. What was your takeaway, Kevin?
Yeah, so I like the one that you had as well, Chris. But so I'm going to jump on. Maybe it was my second one. The visual that he had in the chapter called "Analytics Path to Value," and it reminded me of something years ago that we used to show it more of a pyramid, right? But I like the way he put it together. So the path that he shows, and to try to make it like a visual, it's like dominoes falling on each other, going from data to information to insight, then highlighting that there's a data story, which leads, there you go, thank you, leads to a decision, which leads to action, which then gives you the green, the value. And I love the way that he put it together. What I used to see from years ago is we introduced wisdom. And I think that wisdom is where the insight comes in, right? So when you take your information and you put wisdom against it, the other context that you get your insight, which then leads you to communicate it as your data story, and moving forward from there. And I think we'll hear a lot more from that going forward. So that one was a great takeaway as well.
That's fantastic. Belinda?
Yeah, I had an interesting one. It was the same story, but I that you had, Chris. But I thought back because I told you I kept pausing and thinking about, my own experiences. And I remembered a situation back, this was like in the 96. So I was building a crystal report, which was RBI at the time. And I had a situation where I was building a report, and I think I backed into doing it the right way, into storytelling. But it could have gone really wrong. So they asked me to build this report for 5 customers. And I said, why 5 customers? And why these 5? And he said, well, these are our top 5 customers. And I knew Crystal had a top in, and I said, there's this feature that will automatically calculate the top 5. I said, let's see if you're right. So that became the story. I know that's kind of weird, but he became intrigued. Yeah, okay. And he was ready to be right. And he found out he had 5 of the top 6. And the 5th one that climbed up was someone who bought mistakes. So he realized very quickly, look, we have a problem, and we have an opportunity to sell a less expensive version of our product. But I backed into that the wrong way. And I kept thinking about, what if he would have just got mad at me and yelled bull blank to me when I said that? I mean, it could have very interestingly happened. So I don't know, that just stuck in my head as something pretty fascinating about that particular story.
I like that because, and Brett does a good job of talking about that in here, and I'm not going to be able to page to it. Oh, actually, look at that. When it comes to presenting information, if you're an outsider bringing information in, sometimes that can be good because you're seen as an objective third party. Other times that can be bad because, you're seen as an outsider coming in, in who doesn't know what's going on. That's an excellent insight. Jessica, what did you take from the book?
You know what, the thing that I took away from it that I thought was, first of all, I was paying attention to how much of the story was I absorbing just because it was told in story format. So a lot of what he did was actually in a story format. And I think the thing that I took away, the fundamental thing, was how hardwired we are for stories. Like, we're hardwired from infancy and from prehistory for stories. And so I just thought that was such an interesting comment that, it's something we can leverage without even, it doesn't take any training to understand or deliver a story. To deliver it well, that's a different story, so to speak. But I just took away how fundamental it is to our nature.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That so true, is it? At one point in time, he says, stories beat, stats every time. And that's really true. If you think about, you go into a meeting and even if the number's super good or super bad, like you walk away and maybe you hold on to that number for, a little bit, but at the end of the day, what you remember is that story that was delivered, right? Like last week, Rockwell did our earnings call, and the number, or earlier this week, Rockwell did our earnings call. And because everyone is suffering with chip shortages, we were suffering from chip shortages. So I don't remember what the percent issue was, but I know that the message in the story was chip shortages is bad, right? Like I feel that, right? And that stays with you. That story that's behind the data, I think is so important. That's great. Lee, what did you find most interesting?
The sentence that he published that I think summarizes everything that we've said is that if you want to be insightful and introduce change, you can't just inform, you need to engage. And I think that is so key.
Yeah, and that's where stories get you, right? Like,
Right.
Stories and visuals. And this grid, no one's going to remember this grid, right? Like, oh, who remembers good old PO 58012670? Oh, yeah, that one was a good one, right? But in a report, you might remember, like, hey, this is our top guy. This is our second highest, right? Like those types of things, you can see your cluster of outliers that you can remember. I like that a lot. Awesome. Hey, JP, what was your favorite part of chapter 1? Oh, JP, you're still on mute. We were doing so good. We were on like a total.
And you keep passing up on I don't want to.
Oh, Uma. I'm sorry,
yeah, Uma. Hold on, JP. Uma's been patiently waiting.
Yeah. Uma, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The favorite part for me in the chapter 1 was like the difference between communication and the information. So communication is the two-way process, and we need to understand in that both sides. And in information is just bombarding of the data.
Yes. Oh, I
So
can't
that
find it.
difference. Yeah.
You're 100% right. It is a conversation that you have between two people. Yeah, here it is, right? Just vomiting out data. It is, like, okay, maybe people get it. But if you talk and converse, and that's where the real power comes in data, is having that conversation, understanding what's going on in there. And to piggyback on that, one of the things I love most about working with Power BI is how you can automate all these things that used to be so manual and taxing, right? Like a lot of these, it used to take, weeks to put together some decks where it was just scrolling through data, copying, pasting, doing all that stuff. It was grunt work, right? And there was no real business value added as part of that process. Now that we can automate our loads, automate our processes, now the conversation becomes what's happening inside of our business. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Thank you, Uma. That is a fantastic one. All right, apparently I've got to do better at coming over to this list here. Thank you, Uma. Yes, I love that one. JP, you're back up.
So, Chris, I think that's me. Just warning you, I'm joining
Yes.
from my phone today, not my computer. So
Okay.
I'm how I show up on here. So
All
I'm
right.
guessing it's me. Anyway, taking on to kind of this conversation piece that we've been having, that lots of people have seen. I believe in our company, one of the big things is we've gotten really, really good at that inform piece. We've got tons of great, beautiful reports out there, and we are informing like crazy.
Yeah.
But I think our next step to really be effective is having this conversation piece. And the thing that really, one of the quotes that really stuck out to me is very early in chapter 1. And it was, the Achilles heel of any analyst is a lack of context. So we've got all these people that are really great gurus at building stuff, but they aren't in the nitty gritty of the day-to-day operations to understand the context. And so, it really stuck out to me when they said, data doesn't care who you are or what your analytical skill level is. It's willing to yield up insights to whoever is diligent and curious enough to find them. So that's, I think, the next big thing for us to tackle. We've done a great, within our company anyway, Chris, we've done a really great job. We're on the right path. Next step is, wait a minute. How are we building this to have the conversation? Because if we're just building pretty graphs, do those pretty graphs really mean anything to the people who have to use those? So
I absolutely agree. That is fantastic. You're right, because this pretty chart, that I was just showcasing here, this is meaningless if people can't drive and take action from it, right? Like, oh, hey, that's really nice, right? And we can see that it's not BS, right? Okay, great. But if I can't take that next step and do something with it, what's the entire point of it? Yeah, love that. That's great. Well done. Linda?
Yeah, I had to get back in line again because you said something that stuck in, and I thank Janet so much for putting that quote in, because that was one of my favorite quotes so far. Well, in chapter 1, it was one of my favorite quotes. And you've heard me ask this question before as consultants. How do you get in and start digging and learning? And you've heard me ask people, and you've heard me talk about how astonished I am at that, right? That you really have to have that business analyst in the company to do that. So that's a point. I mean, that is a really, really big point to how we create our story. About it's not just communicating, it's not just us trying to communicate with them. We probably need to drag someone in, a business analyst in, to help us communicate the story to the stakeholders and the shareholders and people.
Right. And honestly, I think that goes into like that first question on the study guide is, what is an insight? And I like this. I highlighted it here, right? An insight is an unexpected shift away from the way we understand things, right? It's not, oh yeah, of course, this is how this should work. It's finding where the reality is different than what we think reality is, right? And like, we've heard that whole thing, right? There's your side, their side, and the truth, right? That's what data, good analytics allows us to find, is where we're wrong, right? And I love being wrong when I find out, because then I can just simply stop being wrong and then be right? It's such a wonderful thing. So I love data because of that, and I love finding insights because it gets me off of being wrong. And so I think that's an approach and a philosophy that's really hard to take on, because who likes being wrong, right? Like, most people don't like being wrong. That feels bad, right? But if we can adopt that, and we can get people that are accustomed to being comfortable with being wrong, then we can really start to change the way we work, to change the way that we operate. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Kevin.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump on what you said, even though originally I put my hand up for something else. But I see an insight. There's been another podcast I've been listening to, and the gentleman has a book called The Data Detective, and he read part of that book on the podcast. He introduced it maybe like a year ago or something like that. But he talked about. No, it's I'll get you the author and everything. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I'll post some of that if I could find it in the YouTube chat of who it is. His podcast is Cautionary Tales. It's very interesting. But anyways, he talked about within data, when you look at something or you see some piece of data, the first question you should ask yourself is, how does it make you feel? And then you kind of step away from it and come back to it, right? And see, was your initial feeling, reaction to it valid? And to me, that's kind of what I think an insight is. As we do our data analysis, as we're trying to figure out the report to put together, we're seeing a lot of different things that we may or may not show, but then something makes us feel a certain way. And then what I'm thinking, I'm hoping to learn more from this book, is now I get a feeling, I have something I think is an insight. Now, how do I tell the story for others to get the same feeling? So that's what I'm kind of hoping as we move forward, I'm going to learn and see from this.
And that's an excellent point, and why I think I was talking about it, Greg, with Greg, and I'm sorry, Greg, I forgot the lady you introduced me to, but she has a graphic design background and an art background, and I thought, wow, that is something that is so critical in this space, because you need to understand and have empathy and understand emotions and feelings and find ways to bring that into our experience as part of that data storytelling, right? And that's something that can be very tricky for people who are very, very analytical in nature. But it's recognizing that diversity of skill set that really does improve our lives, makes us better, and really helps out, right? So like looking for and bringing in, those, people with those skills and abilities to help us is a fantastic idea. That's excellent, Kevin.
Yeah, and Fernando on YouTube just put the author Tim Harford, and he also does that podcast Cautionary Tales. So
okay, excellent. All right, let's Jessica, you had your hand back up.
Yep, I wanted to weigh in on something that Janet said that it just made me start thinking about something that has been sort of an ongoing dialogue in another group that some of us are in, which is whose responsibility is it to be presenting this data and developing this story? And the fact that she said, we're doing a great job of delivering, but we're not doing a great job of creating the story around it. And the business, the person who's going to be able to build that story needs the context. But I also think sometimes there's a credibility issue there. I mean, if you think about, who a business analyst is likely to be, they're, usually on the lower rung of, the business ladder, so to speak. And they may actually be the closest to the data, and they may actually be the closest to the way the business is being run day to day. But when they go to share an insight or try to develop that story, they may or may not have the credibility in the organization to even let that story be heard. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I was thinking at the same time of a story in the 19th century. I don't know, some of you probably have heard this, but it's a classic example. There was a doctor named Semmelweis who was noticing that when he washed his hands, his maternity patients suffered fewer infections than the rest of the other patients being handled by other doctors. And he tried to show this to the other doctors, and they said, no, it's not a thing, even though the data was really there. It was demonstrable that he had lower infection rates and lower, mortality rates because, well, they just disputed that it was because he was washing his hands. But I think it's just one of these things where it's not enough to have the data. It's not enough to weave a story. You have to come with the credibility to carry the weight of that, I guess, is what I'm thinking about.
So I actually very much love that, and I recognize that is a real problem that hits many companies, right? The people who know what's going on in the business have no path to communicate with the people who are leading the business, right? Like by the time that trickles up the ladder, it plays the telephone game and who knows whatever gets out there. Now, I'm going to propose a solution here. So instead of just complaining about something, I like to bring in how we can take on these challenges. And so one of the things that I think Sean is here, and he can attest to this, is I believe in creating forums where people have conversations, and it doesn't matter if you're day 1 on the job or year 40 in the job. It should be a forum where people are able to talk, that they can bring and they can express ideas, they can express frustrations, and that people can help each other out when it comes to dealing with these problems. And I'm thinking about a new forum to create specifically around how do we address insights from people that leaders may need to know, but that they're missing. And so I'm considering creating a specific open session where we start to encourage analysts to come together and specifically talk about their insights within our organization, and encourage leaders to come, to join, to listen to the topics that are being discussed, to see what is going on inside the organization, so that we can uncover those insights, and not just uncover them, but that we could start to make those connections across our organization so that we could start to take action. I think that's you inspired me right there. So thank you so much. That's brilliant. I love that. Yeah. All right. Oh, good. All right. Let's oh, hey, Sean. Sean, what was your best part about chapter 1?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing up the Power Platform Community of Excellence, Chris. I definitely enjoy hopping in on that every Friday. But the most significant insight that I kind of got from chapter 1 was actually, I've heard from now a bunch of different individuals who by occupation are business process analysts. And I am not one of those. I am just a mechanical engineer. So I think that one of the big points that Brent made is this idea that anyone could be an analyst, and this idea that that's kind of what effective data storytelling does, is it allows anyone to use the data they have access to, and they have the unique context to understand in its entirety, and then they can take that and form that into a message that they can bring on to other people to convey their insights. So I thought that was valuable.
100%. I mean, Sean, this is my Fitbit watch. I have IoT streaming data that I'm constantly monitoring and analyzing to check on my health, my workout, my diet, all of that good stuff, right? And I'm probably not the only person on this call that has something along these lines. In fact, they're so common. You can see Apple Watches and Fitbits. They're just, everybody has these things. Everyone. Yeah, there you go, Belinda. Yeah, and Kevin. I mean, we are all becoming data analysts, right? And so a big part of this is, how do we get people connected with data in a way that's meaningful for them so that they can do that analysis? Come on. And Power Hours is specifically for you, because it is for everyone inside the company, right? It does. Yeah, it's not just software engineers. It's not, it is not just IT. I want every hardcore mechanical engineer out there to join our sessions and be part of that, because you know so much about what actually is going on. I mean, you're literally right where this happens, right? That you have so much power to implement and change that. Oh, man, I'm so happy you're there. Oh, awesome. All right. Thank you, Sean. Jack.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of leverage what Kevin and Jessica were talking about earlier, is, how, and maybe this is getting ahead of ourselves as far as this book. I'm really anxious to keep moving through it, but how to tell a story in a disconnected way. My situation is, I have geographic challenges. I have consumers all over the world. I'm not able to always present to them live and tell the story about the data that will provide them insights. I need to have the visual or the story already built in. So when they log in and consume it, they're getting that aha moment. So again, I'm probably jumping ahead, but that's the challenge that I hope to address here.
Oh yeah, because it's not just okay. Hey, I see data, but it's what does it mean, right? How can I take that and understand what I should be doing with that? I like that, Jack, and I think chapter 2 gets much more into that, and I think the whole book starts to get more into that stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to get into that stuff as well. Awesome, thank you, Jack. All right, and I'm sorry, I don't JP, I don't know your
Janet.
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 Apparently, I haven't been speaking up off enough in power hours lately, which is
Oh.
true.
My bad.
No, it's not. I was just going to say one of the other things that really struck me that I highlighted in chapter 1, and it resonates with me because I am going through this right now with a report that I'm really passionate about and trying to expand and operationalize across a wider swath. And this really stuck out to me. It was the potential value of a discovery is directly proportional to the level of resistance it will face. So, it helped me put into perspective, at least saying, okay, well, at least don't have the self-doubt of, no, this maybe isn't a good idea. It is a good idea, but keep in mind that I have to look at it from this other perspective and try and switch chairs for a bit and see what is being disrupted by putting this in. And so I think that's what I'm looking for out of this book, is how to help me tell that story of, or tell the better story. Because that was another thing I highlighted. It's not that your facts are off. It's not that you have a bad story. It's that there's a better story. And so you've got to be the better story.
Right. Oh, I love that. That's great. Has anyone ever had a moment like that where an insight that they needed to present and share was suddenly so disruptive that it's potentially a problem for an organization? I mean, I know, yeah, I was thinking of you, David. You working in a space where, like the response could be like, "Hey, this needs to shut down," or right, like at least in some of our stories, right? And
yeah. Early in my career, I just started with a company, and the owner slash president had his periodic accounts receivable meeting where he kind of, sermonized on, we got to work these accounts receivables, look how much they're out of hand, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm sitting there flipping through the report and doing the math in my head. And I say, oh, Mr. who'll go unnamed, there's only 9 or 10 accounts that represent, the lion's share of our old AR. We just got to work those accounts. And I thought a standing ovation would follow. And instead, there was dead silence. And the number 2 guy came afterwards and told me, yeah, everybody already knows that. Those are his buddies, and nobody talks to him but him. So, yeah, I mean, it's real easy to step on a landmine. So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's you got to sort of work the situation. Every company is different. Every owner's different. Every department's different. And sometimes the story just won't be received. I mean, no matter how good the data is or how well you put a presentation together. If they don't want to hear, they don't want to hear.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, and and that's part of that communication, right? Like, how do you get into a forum where you can have that conversation, and how can we also like protect those of us who are around us who find these things and uncover them so that they're not a target or that there's an issue, right? Like you could pull someone aside and that's where sometimes it is better to like have a small group to review your results with before you just drop these bombs out into some big management meeting. And people don't like that, right? Like they want to be able to come in and be prepared, and that's where that automation of reporting, so that we can have those conversations, do root cause analysis, understand what the impacts are, way before we get to that actual day of that meeting. Yeah. Oh, Jessica.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to say David's comment, context is everything, right? I mean, that just puts a big fat underline under context. But what I wanted to respond to something that Jack said because it triggered a thought for me, not for this chapter or the next chapter, but I don't know if you're keeping like maybe a parking lot, Chris, of ideas or things that we're not ready to discuss yet. But one thing that occurred to me was cultural differences, because Jack mentioned having to communicate globally across, obviously a wide variety of cultures. And, if you're talking about storytelling, it's deeply, deeply embedded in your culture and, what's going to work and what's not going to work. And so I just wanted to put a pin in that idea just so that we can revisit it later on so I don't know if you're keeping a parking lot or not, but anyway, that was what Jack's comment triggered in me.
Jessica, I know you're going to keep me honest with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, just cultural differences, because I can remember this has got nothing to do with storytelling, but I was working, I at one time working for a huge multinational, Unilever, and I worked very closely with Indian colleagues, and I finally got to the point where I really, got to know them and got to know how they communicate. And it was just vastly different from the way, Americans communicate. So I've got to believe that rolls up to storytelling as well.
I mean, that was in Uma's, her favorite point, right? It is a back and forth. It's not just informing people on things, right? And yeah, if you can't break down those cultural, barriers or challenges, like you're the one who's failed to communicate, right? It's not, the other party that's at fault, right? That, we all have to get better. We all have to get more exposed to the different communities that are out there. And yeah, that's a fantastic one. I love that. All right, Linda. This is I gotta move on. This is our last one for chapter 1. So
actually, I was going to start by saying I want to talk about chapter 2, but I do want to talk about chapter 2. But I will say culture is right, because what David experienced, if you live in the Southeast, he ran into the good old boy network issue. So, but yeah, I want to talk about chapter 2. So this is my way to help give us a transition. I want to talk about the Aristotle piece, because look at Kevin. He's all excited about that too. I had no idea we were going to get into philosophy talking about numbers, but what popped into my head when I was reading this, particularly when Aristotle was talking about those 3 modes of persuasions, ethos, logos, and pathos, especially the pathos, the appeal to emotion. What came to my mind was the commercials on TV that deliver statistics. I am a animal rescue advocate, and so have been for probably 30 years or so. It is the commercials where Alanis Morissette singing that really sad song, and they show the cutest little puppies, and meanwhile they're telling us the statistics, right? And what they're doing is they're appealing to us with these. I want to adopt every one of those animals I see, every single one of them. And so those commercials make me cry. When I got TiVo, I would just have to pause and wait for the commercial to be over and then fast forward through it. But that was definitely a story. And it was using that emotional appeal. It was tugging at my heartstrings. And the whole while, the music is lulling me in, the animal is making me cry, and the statistics are breaking my heart.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But you're right. Like, and you go from that emotional state into the numbers, right? And that's incredibly powerful, right? Where was my thing? I've got something here I wanted to share. The piece that I'm going to show, and I'm going to do a little demo of how I like to use it inside of Power BI on this, but then we're going to go right back to you guys. It's all on, you need to have a narrative around your visuals so that you can understand some more contextual things, some more information, right? And so that's where we get into Power BI, and I absolutely am a huge fan of this smart narratives feature, especially because this is something that is so easy to create, right? So I've got my report here. This is my, my guy. It's huge and helpful. If I click on smart narrative, I just generate a narrative that is interactive and applicable to everything inside of the report that I have. Now, having having it on a page can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, right? Because I've got my page; it's all nice and sorted out, right? That's where I like to create a tooltip page that has that narrative that I just created on the other page, paste it over here, and then I set it as a tooltip where it makes sense, because this narrative doesn't make sense inside of like the scatter plot, but it does make a lot of sense when I look at any of the banks that are out there, right? Like here I could see who's my top sales, who's the top customer across all of my. Oh, come on now, always when you're in a demo, right? You could go in and you could see that it gets rewritten. There we are. There we are. And that it rewrites itself. Come on. Just had it. Oh, well. You can see that it rewrites itself, and you have that narration right inside your story. It dynamically changes, rewrites itself based upon what you're looking at. Because that is so impactful and important, to get to what we were talking about before, that context, to get to understanding more of what's going on inside of our data. Awesome. All right. Kevin.
Yeah, so just a quick thing back to the triangle, Aristotle's triangle. My wife is back in school studying philosophy and more psychology, but it led into a great conversation between her and I after I read that part of the chapter, and just the additional elements that he introduced here. I thought was wonderful. So it's great if you want to pick up the book and look at that. But while you're on this same page, I loved this visual of the elements of a data story, right? And I think if you go back one page where he shows the different interactions of it, to kind of how each one of them where the Venn diagram intersects, what it picks up, and then you get to that one bigger one that shows then change comes into the middle of that. Huh. I loved that visualization. I thought it was great. So that's that's it right there. This whole thing.
Explain, enlighten, and engage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the bigger part shows where those three black intersections come together. I think, and I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it well on the screen, but then right in the middle of that is what induces change. So yeah. Great, it's a great section.
Yeah, so and you're actually right. It just kind of dawned on me, like, when we sit down and we look at real technical solutions, we do deep dive code reviews, we run through logic, we look at formatting, we look at process, we look at results that we yield. Maybe it's time we should start to think about applying some of those principles into the reports and analytics that we're doing, right? Like, should we sit down and say, hey, what's the not just show me the data, but like go into the narrative. What's the narrative? What's this telling us? What are the insights we should be gaining, right? What are the visuals? How are we being enlightened, right? Like, run through that as part of like an analytics review to understand, is this something that is useful? If not, maybe we need more in the visual side, or maybe we need more data, right? Like, oh, hey, you know what? The story's incomplete unless we tell this piece, right? So how can we go and get this data and add this in, right? Oh,
that is a great suggestion, right? To say, can you take this part of it and build it into part of your report review process, not just the technical part of the report review, but use this as the framework for that part of, what message are you delivering? That's a great is that an insight, Chris?
I think it was. I didn't know it, right? I think that might be an insight, right?
Well, and as part of that too, you said what else could we add? But I think important is what should we take off? What's just noise and how it's currently being displayed, because it takes away from the story, right? It doesn't matter in this particular, message or what we're trying to guide our consumers through.
Oh, that's fantastic. David.
Yeah. I was just going to pick up on what Belinda was using as her illustration. When you think about it, advertising is sort of a perfect picture of this, because whatever it is, whatever they're trying to sell or get you to do, in 30 seconds, probably what has taken weeks for them to pull together and mold into just the right message, they get it across in 30 seconds. Whether it's, the Humane Society or St. Jude, for whatever reason, we get St. Jude commercials a lot where I am, or a political campaign, which, you see so many ads right now, but like we've got a hot mayor's race right now. And if they talk about crime being up, that might take, 3 seconds to say, and they put a picture of a shady looking character on the screen, and maybe one graph with an arrow going up 30%, but how long did it take to develop that one little 3-second slide? And I think we can make our visualizations too busy and actually defeat the purpose of trying to get people to act. If we just give them too much information, it's just too overwhelming.
And hackers are always wearing hoodies on those commercials. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we as a society have developed, one of the things in the book is whenever we're trying to communicate something, we have to overcome the story that has already developed in the receiver's mind. Okay. And so, hackers are sitting around in the basement wearing hoodies. Right or wrong, that's the mental image that most people have. And so rather than fight against it, use it, to your benefit, so to speak, if you're in advertising.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. Awesome. Okay. Sean, what was your favorite part about chapter 2?
Yeah, so I actually kind of wanted to bring it back a bit to Aristotle's triangle and those 3 elements of persuasion. So logos, ethos, and pathos. And I wanted to, again, hone in on the pathos, because I think one of the really important things, one of the things that drives action in anyone, and this is an important quote, not from here, that I've just kind of picked up from all over the place, and it seems to have blown up recently, but it's this idea that people will forget what you do, they'll forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So I think that's a really important driver, not just for communication, so being able to have an impact on the other party and to allow them to interact with you and engage in that conversation, but also to actually drive someone to action means that they have to be, numbers only drive you so far. If you have a personal interest in something, if you're actually feeling something from the inside moving you, then you're much more likely to actually take action.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah. Well, and here, this is another thing that we could talk as part of our analytics review, right? Are we addressing all of these things? Do we have an emotional appeal? Do we have credibility? How can we visually see that it's credible, right? What's the logic and reason? What's the timing? When is this relevant, right? When is the purpose, right? Why are you laughing at me, Kevin?
Comment that Belinda just put out on the YouTube live stream, where I said most hackers might be sitting in a coffee shop looking sharp, and she says that some are sitting in a gaming chair wearing a hat.
Oh, good. All right, Belinda, back.
Yeah, it's really hard for Kevin and Jessica and I to wait our turn. You know that. If you could go to figure 2.4, I want to talk about the story that that he shared about as a consultant, sharing that if a particular call center company, a call center or support or telephone sales agents rather, if they extended their hours just a little bit at the beginning and the end, that they would be able to close more sales based off of the data. And he was talking about how he didn't hear anything in response to that. And then a few weeks later, they said, yeah, we tried it and it didn't work for us. And what popped into my head when I read this story and I looked at it was, well, first of all, numbers don't lie. So what I would have to wonder on a trial that they did is, I mean, did they just say, okay, everyone's got to work extra overtime hours and we're giving this a try? So people are grudgingly coming in early and grudgingly going home late. So they're not giving their best effort during those times of the day. And is that what's happening? So part of this story has to be, okay, so somehow we've got to figure out how to integrate that in, because they're still losing opportunity by only giving it a not a fair game. So I don't know. What did you think when you heard this story or read this story, Chris?
So I like this one too. Number one, I liked it because he was happy that they tried it and stopped, right? Like, you need to experiment. These insights aren't always going to be true. Sometimes they're just anomalies in the data, or we've uncovered a new way of behavior that we didn't know existed. And I thought in this case, that sounds like the type of time I purposely reach out to these companies, because I don't want to talk to somebody. I just want to get in and out of their chatbot thing so I can log a ticket, I can get the information out, and I can get on with my day, and I don't have to get routed into some central processing unit, right? And so I purposely only call during the day when I want to talk to a live person, and then I wait for after hours or before hours so that I don't interact with them, because for whatever reason I don't have time or whatever. So
that's funny you were thinking about that, because I'm Mary Sunshine. I'm the one that's always going, I'm sure they tried their best. They did everything that they could. And instead I'm going, oh no, they didn't. It wasn't, in the short time that they came back later, because it was just a few weeks later, they didn't give it adequate time to give it a go. And
yeah, I kind of felt the same way, Belinda, but I like Chris's point is the author presented it as a positive that he got them to act on something, right? And I think sometimes we focus on, look, I know my data is correct and I know it's predicting this, and so it should be correct. But even if they act on it, it may or may not be correct. But I also kind of look at it from your point of view is, did they act on it correctly? And did they even gather the right data to do the same analysis? Because the same person didn't come back and help look at the data to see if it was successful or not. So I saw that flaw in it, but I love that he just said, look, take this as a success and move forward with that as a success, and feel good about yourself that you got them to act on something.
Well, it's interesting what Chris came up with, because maybe another action would have been, okay, that didn't work. We might readdress that again. What if you create a whole method where people could have a purely online interaction, maybe with a bot or, with a bot, I guess that would be the only way, and then get a live person if necessary. So that might also be something worth trying. I don't know. It's interesting. There's lots of, I still think there's still a lot of opportunity there, and I don't feel like it's a win unless they got cash in the bank. So
well, but sometimes cash in the bank is because you're always making ROI calculations, right? Is this higher or lower, right? And so, they try it out and they went, oh, you know what? It looked promising, but it's not. We should shift back to our old method, right? And that's a success too, right? Because you have, it's, in business, you've got to take some risks. You got to experiment. You got to try some things, because that's how you grow and that's how you bring about change.
Yeah, and cash in the bank is savings too, not just not just revenue coming in. If you could save enough people time, you could save hiring a whole person. I'll quit chatting so you can move on to Jessica. Sorry.
All right. So, Jessica, this is going to be our last one that we're going to touch on for this week, and then I'm going to wrap it up, and then we'll get back to work. So, Jessica, what's your last thought?
My last thought. So I wanted to share that what I had put in our Teams chat was that I wanted to join this group to be able to have, a different narrative to bring to students about, when I teach them, Power BI, because I'm very good at focusing on the technical. Here you do this, here you do that. But one thing that just occurred to me, or an insight, was one of the things I struggle with is defining what a report is. I mean, of course, I'm able to define a report. Oh, it's it can be multiple pages, it can have lots of visuals or not a lot of it, whatever. But I think for me, one thing I'm going to start adding in there is you might want to think about your report as your story. So, what is the story you're telling? And, your report is your storybook, meaning this is how the narrative is going to unfold. You're going to go from this page to that page to this page, and you're keeping that storyline throughout. So I just wanted to share that because that was one of my goals for joining this group, and I've already achieved one of my goals. So all y'all are slackers here. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Jessica. And honestly, thank you guys all for joining on Teams, on YouTube. For the people in the future who are watching this, thank you so much for joining. We're still taking signups for some of the future weeks. I'm going to post, or they're in the links in the comments down below. So go ahead, sign up for those future weeks. We'll be closing those out relatively soon because we are hitting our caps in a number of different areas. So please sign up soon. Thank you guys all for joining us. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next week for Chapter 3. All right? Thanks, everybody. Peace.